Steve Alfano, my man, welcome to the podcast. It's been a long time coming, huh?
Absolutely, Greg. Thank you very much for having me, and it's a real pleasure to be here and share my story.
I'm
So,
excited, bro. I've known you for over 4 years now. Can you believe I moved to San Diego over 4 years ago? It's fucking wild,
I it feels like a decade ago to me, but
right?
everyone when we speak, it feels like just yesterday
I
that we were
remember you were the first
there.
dude I hung out with. We went out to Amplified Ale Works in PB like the first week I was in town, and we had some beers and shit and got to know each other. And we got connected through a mutual friend of ours, Justin. So, man, this is exciting to have you on the show and talk about your journey as a real estate entrepreneur because you've done some great shit over the last, 5, 6 years. So, if people, before we get into the whole real estate thing, now, what did you do after college? Because you're not that old. You're kind of like my age. So,
Right.
what did you like? Give us like your MO, bro. Like, who the hell is Steve?
So my name's Steven Alfano. I am 32 years old. I was born and raised on the East Coast. I grew up playing ice hockey basically from when I was 3 until I was about 21, 22. Graduated from college, and 2 weeks later, I moved to the Caribbean. And I was living in the Virgin Islands for a couple of years, from 22 to 24, where I bartended, did construction, basically any sort of odd job. And, figured one day I wanted to be a Caribbean businessman. And I left the Caribbean to figure that out. And I always knew that real estate was the path, but it it took a while to catch my groove, and then figure some things out that have led me to where I am today. So
I forgot that you lived in the damn Caribbean. Well, you live in the Caribbean again, which is ironic, but I forgot you lived in the Caribbean before you came out to San Diego. So you ended up coming to San Diego after. So how did you like when you got to San Diego, like what did you do? And then how did you end up getting connected with our friend Justin and teamed up with him for a while?
yeah, so I moved out there because when I left the Caribbean, I got a job selling windows, gutters, doors, and siding in the DC area. And I was able to leverage that experience into selling flooring and decking over the phone to contractors, consumers, basically everybody, for a company out in San Diego. So I moved out there. I got fired and was that's a whole nother story, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. That led me to real estate. So right then and there, the day I got shit canned, I went to the beach and went surfing at Black's after. And I just thought, okay, like this is a point in my life where I can do whatever I want. And my grandparents were always big into real estate. They had a brokerage at one point. They had been building spec homes. So I wasn't, unfamiliar with it as an avenue to create wealth for yourself and your family. And that's when I basically got into it. So I started door knocking neighborhoods like Claremont in San Diego and just like trying to talk to sellers, cold calling people, and ultimately had no success, zero success. And, you know, at that point, I got a job working for fortune builders, just to, basically pay the bills while I continued to try and wholesale. And wholesale with no money, which I'll tell you what, a lot of people talk about doing it, very difficult to
Not
execute.
easy to do in San
Very
Diego
difficult.
out of all places.
Very difficult. So I realized that, and ultimately I was able to put a few deals together while I was working there, and I left fortune builders after only 6 months. And that's when I met Justin Lee, and he was looking for an acquisition manager. And I met with him. We had a great discussion about not only just real estate and what I was trying to do, but life in general. And I met with him and Dreama, and then they took me under their wing, and they taught me what it was really about to be a small business owner. operating in a boutique setting because they do beautiful homes. Like the work that they're doing is incredible on a lot of these projects where, it's in a higher price point than most people are able to uh, have longevity at. There's a lot of hiccups that can come with, $1 million house and $250,000 renovation.
Oh,
And
tons of yeah, that's not easy to do.
and they do it successfully, and they're all in every price point, but I mean, to have success in that price point is an advantage, but it's very difficult to do at scale, and there's a reason for that, is because there's not a lot of deals out there.
Yeah.
And basically that's how I met Justin, started working for him, and he showed me how to do everything: acquisitions, dispositions. He put me through John Martinez's training. I started, that's, another place where our paths crossed. And, you and I have always been so similar with, learning as much about sales as you do about the business itself, because it's a whole nother thing to actually be able to get the properties or the product that you're looking for. And
at the right number too, right? In San Diego, you got to work those sellers because they're tough. I mean, they're real tough. It's big paydays, but you're dealing with people who really know what they got, right? You're not dealing with dummies. I mean, I've seen some dummies out here, but most of the people that I deal with in California, that Brett deals with too, they know what they're doing. And you can still make money, but it's not, I think San Diego and Orange County and LA are probably the hardest markets in America to do deals in my opinion.
So what I learned is that it boils down to really a few things, and it's finding out how you can make that seller's life easier, because you're going to have to be at a competitive price point. How can you solve whatever problems they have outside of the price?
Yeah, right. That's the key.
And that's what's going to ultimately lead to success. That and just sheer numbers,
just making them an offer. And it's funny you say that, because like before we transition to how you really started doing a ton of business down when you went back to the East Coast, but I have found from my experience, actually, it's funny, when you were doing deals in San Diego, I was too much of a pussy. So I kind of like held off. And then after like a year and a half, I was like, I'm going to make some money in San Diego. And I fucking started doing deals out here. And from my experience, the type of seller in San Diego, they're not distressed, they're reasonable. So if you can kind of like build a relationship with them, or sometimes just give them a number that they want. Like a lot of the deals in San Diego that I've done, they weren't in pain, but they had a pretty good ask price right off the bat. And then I was able to get the property with a minimal level of rapport and still wholesale it for 50 grand plus. So you're not going to really run into people who are in fucking jams in San Diego usually. Like they might be like, they might be old and tired, but like you're not going to really run into people who are desperate because there's just so much equity out here. That's what I found, at least.
That is a big thing. So it's, what else can you do for them? Because the price is going to be there. And there's so many different ways to help people beyond price, whether it's, helping them move, getting them set up somewhere else. Like, what is it? Take what you want, leave what you don't. Like all these sort of catchphrases that you can, give them that allow them to make their sale of their property, which in areas like Southern California where people are moving, like La Jolla, PB, OB, Point Loma, Claremont, all those places, North County, like it's you're at a crazy price point. The sellers are savvy enough to know what their place is worth because of how much money all their neighbors are making when they're selling. Like that's really hard not to see.
And especially with all the data online now too.
Exactly. So So they're very savvy, and you have to be able to solve a problem for them beyond price. And usually it's ease of transaction. And if the place does need repairs, if they haven't kept it up for whatever reason, then that's just another avenue. Otherwise, you're probably not going to be getting a good deal on it, because there are still so many people that want to live in Southern California,
Totally,
right?
bro.
Like there's jobs there. It's beautiful. There's things to do. Like, hey, I lived there for 5 years. Like, I understand why people would want to live there,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah, right. It's a destination. It's a destination city with a good economy. That's why
yeah,
it's a sticking point, because it's not like you're in like Hawaii, which has a more tourist-based economy. Like Southern California, there's a shitload of companies and real economy, and people make a lot of fucking money out there. So it's just a different animal. So as you transition, you eventually moved out of San Diego and actually headed back to the East Coast to do a ton of house buying, to say the least, for one of the bigger companies in America, or as I would say, America. So I want to really spend some time covering really how you got 10 years of experience in 2 years. So can you share with the listeners how you eventually transitioned back to the East Coast, back to your backyard practically, and then what that looked like? Because man, we've caught up over the years, and like I just saw you fucking start growing and growing and growing and doing more deals, and it's been really fun to watch. Seriously, bro.
well, I appreciate you saying that. And I was at a crossroads when I was working with Justin and Dreama, to where I felt like I was, I don't know if stagnating is the right word, but there's only so much growth. And what they were doing is perfect for them. They've had tremendous success, in the past. And I mean, they've been in business for probably 20 years now.
Yeah.
So, they know what works. And ultimately, I was starting to outgrow any role that there was there for me. And I was still, I had a decision to make. Do I go at it again and do it for myself, which is what you've done and so many others have done? Or do I continue to learn and learn and learn with little to no risk, and
Yeah.
be able to stack a truckload of dough so that when I'm ready, I can do my own thing in my own way, and it can be different, and it can work at a small or a large scale, and we'll get to that in a second. But yeah, so I decided that I was going to go and work for one of the most visible and longest tenured companies, Express Home Buyers. You and Justin both know the owners, Brad and Judd,
Great
and
guys.
great guys, and introduced me, and I continued to follow up with them. I was doing deals on my own. I was probably in contact with them for 3 months before even going into their office. And it was constantly just, reaching out to them like, hey, I think I can bring you guys value. Like, you guys know Greg and Justin, like, call them if you want, ask them about me, that's fine. But like, regardless of what they say, I think I can still bring you tons of value. And they had just gone through a reorganization of their company, and they had just, so many leads, like so many leads, because they've been around for so long. And I was able to go in there and basically just start calling their database. And that's what they hired me to do, was be an out of market acquisitions and disposition specialist, was my job title there. And what I did
What do you mean
was,
by out of market? Just so if the listeners don't know what you mean by that.
so they operate heavily, and I would consider them the incumbent and powerhouse in the DC metro area. So DC,
Absolutely, by a long shot.
Virginia, they have that on lock, and it's because they provide the greatest service you could ever provide to somebody when selling a home. If you really need to sell it quickly, that's why they're called Express Home Buyers, right? Like, and they will literally buy your house in 7 days or less. They had great resources in there, in the DC metro area. and they still had all of these leads from all over the country that, are really too valuable to sell to somebody, or refer to people or anything like that. Like, they're people that are reaching out from all over the country that want to sell their house, and somehow they've come across Express Home Buyers because of its great reputation. And I was able to call all those people back, and and I did. I would be on the phone all day long buying houses over the phone. I also would go on appointments in the DC metro area. So, my day would consist of wake up, call as many people as I can, go to an appointment at 10 a.m., buy a house somewhere in the DC metro area, go back to the office, eat lunch, call more people, hopefully go to another property, hopefully buy another house, and then go home at night and then call people on the West Coast trying to do deals out in like
Oh,
California.
because of the Pacific time zone. Yeah.
Exactly. And I did
People on
that.
the West Coast.
And then, so I did that
Fucking love that, dude.
for years. Like, I got hired there in October of
19,
2019.
right?
Yeah, October of 2019. And then all through COVID, all through that, like, people stopped working during COVID. I called 10 times as many people as I had before, like when I wasn't going out on appointments. And there's a lot of success with all of that. And I was able to basically build out a process that works if you're willing to put in the work. And you can buy and sell houses all over the country.
Dude,
So
that is fucking unbelievable. And I mean, it's just crazy to see how, like, when you move to the East Coast again from San Diego, the opportunity that was presented to you. And I want to acknowledge you for adding value to that opportunity, and ultimately, serving a lot of people, including yourself, by making a pile of money in the process. So I want to drill deep on a couple things that you have learned, from speaking to thousands and thousands of sellers and thousands of buyers, and putting deals together virtually without ever seeing these homes or meeting these sellers or buyers. So when it comes to when you started dealing with people, like, I know the answer is everywhere, but where were most of these out of market leads coming from, if you had to pinpoint a certain geographical region?
So the bigger question when you're looking at this, I think, would be,
I'm still here, by the way. I'm just throwing out my gum.
okay. All right. I'd say the bigger question when you're looking at this is, where is it going to be easiest for me to sell a place
I'm here.
if I sign it up?
Yeah.
And that is what I focused on, because the leads are coming in from literally anywhere, from middle of nowhere, Kansas, where it would take you 2 years to find a buyer if you're giving it away. And like, straight up, like, I've gone through all of this, and it's really, as an investor, you can't provide value to that person in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. But I'll tell you what, in the suburbs of Nashville, in, the suburbs of Denver, in basically any suburban place with any sort of job infrastructure or any sort of urban environment that has industry and the crime's just not wildly out of control. Like, these are things to think about when you're looking at how you're going to spend time with what sellers you speak to. The first thing you should be thinking about is, am I going to even be able to sell the place that I'm about to buy? Right? If that's your investment strategy, right? If you're looking for rentals, it's completely different, and that's a whole nother thing. But if you're looking strictly to wholesale, you need to look at where these houses are that there's going to be the most competition from buyers, because the biggest nightmare is you get a property under contract and there's only a single investor within 60 square miles.
You're fucked.
of of where you're getting it. And that investor could be picking up their deals on their own with very little to no marketing for 55% of ARV minus repairs, 40% of ARV minus repairs. Like in these rural areas, that's not out of the question. And being able to get the property at a price that makes it desirable to that investor is a really tricky game. And we didn't really do a lot of that because of the brand risk, right? Like at Express Home Buyers, they are going to close on every property that they put under contract if they can't find a buyer, right? Like
that's a big deal too. That goes a long freaking way.
And that's one of the reasons why I have so much respect for those guys. And it really teaches you how to educate a seller in those rural areas about what they should be looking for. And until we get to what I've now built, the best thing for them typically was to either list it for sale by owner or with an agent.
Got it. You're frozen, Steve. Hey, you're frozen. To all the listeners out there, when you do podcasts on Zoom, sometimes the things freeze. So we will wait for Steven to join us again, and the show will resume soon.
Hey,
you're back. That Puerto Rican internet. Oh, almost back. Now you're
sorry
back.
about that.
You're good to go.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So what I was saying is we would educate the sellers that if we weren't the best fit and we couldn't come together on price, like I would always make them an offer. And I'd say, hey, listen, I'm not sure this is what you'd be looking for, but if we were to purchase the property, we would need to be at X.
Yeah.
And I would just see what they would say. And they're like, and if they took it, great. Like I would probably be able to, like, we would buy it and renovate it and sell it, or we would wholesale it, right? Depending on who we knew in the area. When you get to the more densely populated areas where there's buyers, that's where it really becomes the process. And how can you make somebody's life as easy as possible to purchase the property over the telephone while you're on the phone with them in that first call? So you need to be able to figure out the condition of the property without seeing pictures. You need to be able to judge their level of honesty, or let's call the margin for error in their statements about the condition of the property. And then you need to figure out what you think you'd be able to sell it for, with or without repairs. And that's how you put a deal together. Is, hey, if I don't put anything into this, how much can I sell it for right now?
That's a big deal. As is value is something people don't talk about as much as they should.
Right now, how much can I sell it for? Okay, if I paint it, then what? If I paint and carpet it and put a new roof on it. Okay, if I do everything.
I love it.
Right? And then you figure out what that is, and you need to be able to do that within like 5 minutes of getting on the phone with somebody. Otherwise, it's just going to be a complete waste of your time. And that's what I found was one of my biggest strengths, was identifying if I could help the person with what they were looking for and able to profit from that. Right? Like first, can I help you? And if I can't, like, it's like if the seller says, hey, I'm just looking to get a few offers, I'm not sure if I'm going to sell yet, just want to figure out what the place is worth. Like, I'd be like, why don't you just call an appraiser?
And then,
right? Like,
well, my tenants haven't paid rent in about 2 months now. And so a lot of sellers will come at you with their guard up and they'll hold their cards close to their chest. And when you actually like flush them out a little bit, they're either going to identify they're a real tire kicker, or they're going to say, well, you know what? I should tell you my tenants haven't paid rent in a while. Oh, okay. Well, how long's that been going on for? And then I always say, like, my favorite question I train my team with is like, hey, before you got our postcard, how long have you been thinking about selling this for? And if the answer is, well, I'm just trying to see what your offer is. Okay, so it sounds like you really don't want to sell. You just want to see what the house is worth. They're identifying themselves as someone who's a looky-loo. But if they're like, well, I've been thinking about selling for 6 months and, I'm kind of tired of keeping up with all the maintenance. Oh, how long's that been going on? And now all of a sudden they're getting themselves to explain more to either qualify or disqualify themselves without me having to really say anything. I'm just asking them a few questions.
and then this is just for everybody. These people are reaching out to you to sell a property. Like, if you're reaching out to them and it's cold, that's a whole nother thing, but you're still on the phone with them and they're speaking to you about a property. So while you're doing that, you need to take it way further than so if they say, yeah, I'm tired of the maintenance and all of that. Wow. Talk to me a bit more about that maintenance. How long has that been going on for? How much does that cost you? What else could you have done with that money instead of throwing it into that? And that is where you're able to take all of those things that they've said and you're able to use that as what you're going to solve for. The trick is actually having to be able to solve for it. Like, you need to be able to solve their problems, and they'll tell you what their problems are. It's just, are you good enough at solving it for them? And you can do a lot over the phone, and doing that on, like, thinking on your toes, like, how can I legitimately solve this person's problems and be able to articulate that through an offer.
Everyone's got to go back and re-listen to what Steven just said. Go back 25 seconds and re-listen to what he just said. Because if you can just get good at that one thing, you will never have to worry about money again in this business. You will have more money than you'll ever know what to do with within reason. Because ultimately you're going to be paid to be a problem solver. Like, your ability to make money in this business is directly correlated to your ability to solve problems. And that's something that any investor, whether they're new or experienced, needs to understand completely. And I'm excited for our next segment of the show, where we're going to talk about a platform that Steven has designed to actually do this. But before we get into that, Steven, what, just from your memory, you've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of houses with Express. What are some of the biggest deals you remember doing in like markets where you were like, holy shit, I can't believe I just put that deal together? If you can maybe walk through like one or two, if you remember.
Yeah. So, there's a lot, but there's some of the places that are rural. Like, there's one in Texas that, like, I went out on a limb on, because, like, I knew the value was there.
Yeah.
And it's a unique property, which is something you always want to stay away from.
Yeah. At all costs.
It needed a ton in repairs, which is another thing that you always want to stay away from. And fortunately, I was just able to solve a guy's problem. He had a place that he had a lot of equity in. He had family members that were living there that he did not feel the need to provide for anymore.
Yeah.
Like, some might call it they were freeloading off him. Others might put it differently. Who am I to say? I'm not, I wasn't there, but he wanted to be able to get all of them out, sell the place without having to put a penny into it. And he wanted to do X, Y, and Z, 1, 2, and 3 with the proceeds. I was able to get him to tell me what he wanted to do with the money that he was about to make off the property and how much he wanted to walk away with beyond that. And I was able to put something together for him, send it over to him, walk him through it, and then he signed it. And I think the numbers were like, we bought it for 150 grand, and we did it on his timeline. I think it took like 3 months for him to be able to get all the people out. So there was that, and then it sold for like 275.
Did you close it or wholesale it?
We closed on it.
Oh, so you guys bought the deal in Texas. You bought it in Texas.
Yes. And the reason why is because I reached out to other investors and they told me that they wanted it at 175. And there were like, could we have wholesaled it for 25 grand? Yeah, we could have, but there were properties that were very, very similar that were selling for 350. There was one listed right across the street on West Land that was listed at 400 grand.
Oh, it's a no-brainer to just take it down and fucking put it back on the market.
For well under 400 grand, well under 300 grand.
Yeah.
And that was just something where like you can make money in rural areas. It can be done.
Was it in like a metro area, or was it literally in the middle of Texas?
Yeah, so I want to, I'm not sure how much I can say about all this sort of stuff, but I will say it was outside of San Antonio and outside of Houston by quite a distance.
Got it. Like, I have it. I get what you're saying. So it was like a sub market of a major market. It wasn't like
it was well beyond a sub market. Like it's straight rural. There's nothing going on out there.
A lot of land in Texas.
So there's that. I mean, there's always California. Like you can talk to somebody. I signed up a deal at 1 a.m. Eastern time because there's nothing that would stop me from buying a house, and it doesn't matter what time of day it is. So the dude was like a bouncer. He had his girlfriend that was doing whatever, and they were behind on their mortgage. They had gone through the forbearance. The bank was saying that none of that mattered, is what they were telling me. But ultimately, like in the title search, like we found out like they're in the rears. And it was the fact and I'd ever condo the valley. And that's like, it was just so quick.
You got cut off there for a minute. You said it was a condo.
Yeah, sorry about that. So it was a condo in like the valley in LA.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. The place was packed to the gills with belongings, we'll call them. And
packed to the gills, I like.
Yeah, so packed to the gills with belongings. And they like, it had a detached garage, I think, and it was like a 2-bed, 2-bath. We signed it up at 450. We put it on the market and sold it for 550. And after like agent commissions and all of that, like we were able to get them to sign basically the listing agreement so that we could list it without having to purchase it.
Oh, you put it on the MLS when you were in contract?
Yes. And in some states, it's called equitable interest, and you don't need them to. In some states, you need to get a limited power of attorney from the sellers for you to be able to execute those contracts. And in some states, it's just easier that if you set the proper expectations with the sellers, that they can just sign the documents and you can just still do the deal.
Dude, so it's epic.
Yeah. So that was another pretty cool one. There's one in Louisiana and New Orleans that was like a nightmare house that we did that like, I mean, it was, I'm pretty sure it was still damaged from Katrina in 2008. And this is like in 2020 that we're doing this. And, I called some guy that I had met sometime down there. He put me in touch with another guy that was closer to the house. And that guy went through and he found all sorts of things that you do not want to find in the house, like syringes,
Oh,
like these sorts of things. And he was like, on top of that, it looks like all the plumbing's been ripped out of it. So there's that. So like we have this under contract. The seller is an out-of-state seller, and they just didn't want to do anything. They were like, Steven, just take care of this for us, and like we're getting what we'll get. And I think that was like a $55,000 wholesale deal.
it's amazing.
And I was really big on, you don't have to go for the 100K fee every time, like, or
You have
any
to do that
time for
every
that
deal.
matter.
It's hard to wholesale every house and make $100,000 unless you're in like, San Francisco and you're doing like 2 deals a year. It's tough. Every house to wholesale.
Yeah. So you have to get it at a price that a seller's going to say yes to. And then you have to be able to market it at a price that a buyer's going to say yes to. Like
Absolutely.
The people that are actually fixing and flipping homes are not stupid. You might get one person that is uneducated that'll get in way over their head. And if they're able to survive that, I promise they're not going to make the same mistakes again.
Totally. Yeah, it's like you have to keep looking for that avatar every time you sell a house if you want to sell it to a moron. Like you got to spend a lot of time looking for morons. So that actually brings us to what I wanted to really talk about today, which is anycasa.com. That's ANYCASA.com. So Steven, you worked with Express for a while. You decided to now go off on your own and start your own really online marketplace. So why did you start the company? And then how can the listeners or any buyers and sellers in America benefit from what you've created?
Yeah. So I created anycasa.com. Well, first, so I moved to Puerto Rico in November of 2021 to start my company, Get Assets LLC. Get Assets LLC is a real estate investing consulting firm, as well as a fintech and real tech developer. So I personally am able to program and code and build all of these cool things that are on the internet. And I've taken all of my experience in real estate to build what I believe is the easiest way to transact real estate to date, and it's definitely the fastest and most cost-effective way for you to transact real estate. So it's peer-to-peer real estate transactions without agents. And essentially what it boils down to is you can sign up for free, you can register as a buyer or a seller. And if you register as a seller, it's very simple. You take out your phone, you take pictures of your property, up to 20 of them. They upload right to the listing. You answer a condition form about everything a buyer would need to know about the property. So how old's the AC? What type of AC is it? HVAC, hot water heater age, roof age, all that sort of stuff. It's very easy. It takes less than 5 minutes. You set your desired terms. You set access windows. If you want to hold open houses, you can put it on a lockbox if you want, or you can sell it as inaccessible. Like if there's tenants that are uncooperative or hostile or squatters, you can post it as inaccessible, basically. So if you're tech savvy, it'll take you about 5 minutes to post a property. And if you're not, it'll probably take you 15 minutes to post the property. And instead of using traditional agents, there's the Anycasa marketing process, which essentially it's all over the internet. So you're able to take the link of your active listing that you just post for whatever price you want for any property that you have the right to sell, and you're able to share that link with anybody that you want. Buyers then are able to sign up for free, and they'll verify their proof of funds. So if they're planning on making a deposit or making a cash purchase, then it'll make sure that they have enough dough in the bank for that. And that's done using Plaid, which is an industry leader in fintech operations, and I've integrated with them. And then basically you can upload a hard money lender line of credit. If you're doing hard money deals, I'm sure you could just email your lender and say, hey, send me letters saying that you lend me money. And then for retail mortgages, just get your pre-approval letter from your lender, and you can upload that as well. And then you can make offers from within the app, and all of the contracts are executed in a software that I built with DocuSign. So Get Assets LLC is a DocuSign partner and independent software vendor. And I was able to build an integration into Anycasa so that all contracts can be executed all in their legal jurisdictional stuff, and it's all good to go and above board. So say that you post a property and there's a buyer that wants to buy it.
Yeah.
They can either go to the open house, or if it's on a lockbox or whatever, or they can just make a sight unseen offer. All right. Say the offer is accepted and the seller, clicks the sign button after so the buyer uploads the contract that they want to send to the seller into the DocuSign portal that is part of anycasa.com. And then so you fill all of that out. So say, Greg, you want to buy 123 Jones Drive, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, right? You fill out that contract on your computer, or you print it out, you write it in, you scan it back, however you do it. And then you upload that PDF to Anycasa in the make offer section, and it sends directly to the seller. Once the seller so once the seller signs, I am going to be releasing over the next few weeks a massive amount of educational resources on how to use it. But essentially, if there's a ratified purchase agreement, which means that both the buyer and the seller sign and accept a purchase contract, all right, it automatically gets a copy sent to the buyer's title company, or title settlement and escrow company, as well as the seller. All right. The title settlement and escrow company then there's a closing stage portion. So once the property has an accepted offer and it's pending, the closing stage portion is ran by basically the third party title and settlement company. So if you're using, ABC Title, then once they get the contract, they'll basically request the deposit from the buyer. Once they get the buyer's deposit, they'll mark that as complete. They'll start the title search, and then the buyer and seller are able to see the closing stage progression, which I think
all within the software.
All within the software.
Dude, that is going to be freaking gangster, bro.
Yeah. So one of the biggest pains in the ass when you're investing in real estate is holding the hand of a less than savvy seller through the closing process.
Oh, it's a nightmare,
bro. Title companies rarely, they're great at a lot of things, and one of them is typically not holding the hand of all parties involved in the transaction.
No.
This is able to clearly show the stages of where you're at when it's closing and what's going to happen next. So first, it's title receives ratified purchase contract, then title receives buyer's deposit, start the title search, title's cleared, closing scheduled, and then the closing. And it's a 5-minute onboarding process for title companies. There's a link that any buyer is able to send whatever title company they want to use. So if you're an investor, you definitely have title companies that you prefer working with. And if you're not, then like if you're just a retail buyer, then you can just Google title companies, talk to somebody, figure out who you want to use, and then send them the link and you can use them. And that way you're not getting dragged over the coals on rates or things like that. You're able to basically use all that, and then once a title company is registered, anybody can log on. So I already have a few states set up on the East Coast with title companies, but if there's others, and I mean I'm talking with a lot of them just to get them on board. So hopefully within the next few days it'll be nationwide, but ultimately if buyers want to use somebody, they can bring them to the table.
I love it, man. So this is going to be a great piece of software that is going to simplify buying and selling without all the bullshit. Because with your experience and a lot of the experience of the listeners here, doing deals is lucrative, but it's also a very big pain in the ass when you're working with all different types of people and not everyone's on the same page. So I just really like how you actually give me a sample. You gave me a sneak peek of the software before, and it's like just being able to see how simple it really is to use. It's going to just make everything easier, whether you're buying wholesale deals or whether you're buying, retail deals. So question for you is how does any Casa LLC, like what type of fees should people expect to pay when they're doing deals? Because obviously everyone's got to eat.
Yeah. So right now it's buyers don't pay any fee whatsoever. I mean, if you want, you can pay a buyer's agent a fee, but ultimately you can download a contract, fill in the address and the price, upload it, and send it directly to a seller, all for free. Buyers have to pay all the closing costs, which is nothing new to any investor. In fact, it makes it just easy for everybody. And then the seller pays a 1.5% platform fee. So here is where the cost breakdown really comes into play. So say that you sell 123 Jones Drive, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for 400 grand. If you list it for sale by owner right now, traditionally how you would list it for sale by owner, it's going to be a $150 to $300 flat rate listing fee. It'll be 2.5 or 3% to a buyer's agent. You're going to have to pay half of the closing costs. And that's going to be anywhere from, if it's a $400,000 house, it's going to be anywhere from 12 to 20 grand. All right. Yeah. Like that's not including any repairs or concessions that you have to make for inspection items, right? Like that's a variable. This is like known. If you're using a regular realtor in a place where you don't know anybody, you're going to be paying 3% to the seller's agent and 3% to the buyer's agent. You're still going to be splitting the closing costs 50-50. And your costs selling that $400,000 house with a regular realtor is going to be like 26 to 32 grand.
Yeah, literally.
With any Casa, the buyer pays all the closing costs. It's a 1.5% transaction fee. There's no buyer's agent fee, and it's 6 grand that gets paid out at closing out of the seller proceeds. So it's half the cost of listing it for sale by owner. And it's, just way cheaper and way easier than dealing with a regular realtor.
And way more efficient too, with all the software that's built into it.
Yeah. So leading to more of the software, there's a million things that I'm going to be adding on to it. But as of right now, there's a couple million cash buyers on there that have their names and phone numbers that people can send, like people can reach out to them on their own. But if you're posting a property, you get access to that information. Also, it's free for people to just search the property records. And it'll give you like the APN number,
for any property in America.
Yeah. So, wow. Yeah. So you're able to do that as well. And there's a bunch of other data that I have that I'm excited to release. But ultimately, I wanted to build a site that gives sellers everything that they need to get their property seen by enough people that they can field legitimate offers. I've done that. I wanted to build a place where all the buyers could, if you know what you're doing, you can take a look at this and figure out exactly where you need to be without going to this place with the information that's provided. Would I still want to go to it? Yeah, absolutely. Because there's nothing like going to see a property or having somebody go
The
to see a
truth
property
comes out
for
right
you.
away when you're there.
Exactly. So I would recommend using the access windows to access the property. All sellers have to either put it on a lockbox or have 2 4-hour open house windows.
Yeah.
And if they can't do either of those things, then they have to sell it as inaccessible, which I mean, I get, but they should expect lower offers in return. So,
100%.
Right? Like, that's
Yeah,
reasonable.
you can't. Yeah, it's the terms are shit. Yeah, if you can't see it, you know, you gotta expect for the, plan for the worst. Expect, assume that it's a shithole, or the either the property or the tenant situation could be occupant situation could be a shithole. So, Steven, man, if people want to check out any, like, what is the best way for them to see this software so they can start using it?
Yeah, just go to anycasa.com, anycasa.com. So
It's a
whether
great domain.
whether you're a power of attorney for sellers that needs to sell, whether you're an entity that wants to sell, or a signed contract, so you can do that as well. There are no assignments or wholesaling of anycasa.com sellers properties. However, if you sign up a house outside of any casa, you're more than welcome to post the property as an assignment if you are an entity doing deals. So you need to be a business, and it needs to be a deal from outside of any casa, like through your own marketing and resources. But once you got the contract signed, you can assign it using any casa. So there's that.
How do people reach you, Steven, if they want to learn more about this, maybe connect with you and find out more and how it can benefit them?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram at Sell Any Casa. So SELLANYCASA. Or you can just find me on LinkedIn. And if you know somebody I know, they can jeopardize our friendship by giving you my number.
That's too funny, buddy. And in closing, if you had to leave one last piece of wisdom for people, if they want to really do more real estate deals, you can only say one thing. If someone was holding you to the fire, what would you tell them?
Perseverance.
I love it.
Just, if you're not waking up every day thinking about how you're going to do more deals, it's not for you.
I love it. I love it.
And it needs to be, what I would consider a lifelong pursuit. Like, from the day that you start, you need to think every day from here on out, I'm going to be doing deals. And it might take you, a day to get there. It might take you 90 days to get there. It might take you 2 years, 3 years to get there. But you need to be about it every day. Otherwise, you're going to just lose a ton of money, and that's never good. So.
I love it, bro. Well, it's amazing to see your growth on your journey and to call you a friend. And obviously we've been in touch since you moved out of California. So check out anycasa.com. Follow Steve on Instagram. He put his Instagram handle in there below earlier. Steven, it's always a pleasure having you on the show, and I'm looking forward to having you on in the future to talk about how Any Casa is changing the game, man.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Greg. Looking dapper as always, and I'm sure we'll talk soon, man. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.
See ya.